Let me start with something that might completely change how you see yourself. Your brain is not the problem. Now, I know that sounds strange because for years you've probably been told the opposite. You've been told that how you feel comes from your brain. If you feel flat, if you feel anxious, if you feel unmotivated, you've been told it's because of things like low dopamine, low serotonin, chemical imbalances. And the solution? Fix the brain. Take something, change the chemistry, try to boost something inside your head. But here's the problem with that idea. Like, it sounds right, but it's incomplete because it assumes something that isn't actually true. It assumes that your brain is the source of the problem. And what if it's not? What if your brain isn't actually creating the problem? What if it's responding to something else? Let me explain this simply. Your brain is not operating in isolation. It doesn't just wake up one day and decide, today we're going to feel anxious, today we're going to have no motivation, today we're going to feel low. That's not how your brain works. Your brain is constantly receiving information, signals, messages, like literally all of these signals and messages from your body. And based on those signals, it adjusts how you feel. So instead of thinking my brain is broken, a better way to look at it is my brain is responding to the signals it's receiving. That's a completely different model. Because if your brain is responding, then the real question becomes, where are those signals coming from? And this is where everything starts to shift. Because those signals don't start in your brain. They actually start in your body. And they start in places like your gut, your immune system, your energy systems, and your nervous system, and your brain is simply responding to that information and creating a state that matches it. Let me give you an example. Have you ever had a day where, nothing is wrong in your life, but you feel flat, low, and unmotivated, and you can't explain why? That's not random. That's not your brain failing. That's your body sending signals, and your brain is reacting to them. Or the opposite, where you wake up one day and you feel good, you feel clear, you feel motivated, you feel focused, exactly the same life, exactly the same environment, different states. Why? Because the signals changed. This is the part most people never learn. Your brain is more like a receiver, not the source. It's reading what's happening inside your body and adjusting accordingly. So when people say, I just need to fix my mindset or I just need more discipline, they're often trying to override something. And that is being driven from underneath. And that's why it feels hard, because you're trying to fix the output without changing the input. Now, this doesn't mean your brain doesn't matter. It truly does. But it's not where the problem starts, it's where the problem shows up. That's a big difference. Because it changes where you focus. Instead of trying to hack your brain directly, you start asking, what is my body telling my brain? Because that's where the leverage is. And once you understand that, everything becomes easier. Because now you're not guessing. You're not chasing random solutions. You're working with how your body actually works. And here's the most important part. If your brain is responding to signals, then those signals can be changed. And if those signals change, your state changes, your mood changes, your energy changes, your motivation changes. Not because you forced it, but because your body allowed it. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to break this down in a way that is so simple. Not complexity, not overwhelming science, just clear understanding. By the end of this, you're going to understand what neurotransmitters actually are, where they, truly come from, and most importantly, how to influence them by literally changing what's happening in your body. So instead of trying to fix your brain, fix the signals. And when you fix the signals, your brain has to follow. That's where we're going. All right. Now that we've shifted the idea that your brain is not the source, let's make this really simple. What are neurotransmitters? Because you've probably heard that word a lot, like dopamine and serotonin and GABA. It gets thrown around everywhere, but most people don't actually understand what they are. So let's strip it right back Neurotransmitters are just messages. That's it. They are chemicals your brain uses to send signals. So think of neurotransmitters like text messages inside your brain. One part sends a message, another part receives it. And that message influences how you feel and how you act. So for example, dopamine is often linked to motivation and drive, wanting to do things. Serotonin is linked to mood, stability, and feeling okay. GABA is linked to calm and relaxation. Now here's where most people stop. They hear that and they think, okay, so if I feel unmotivated, I need more dopamine. If I feel low, I need more serotonin. And that leads to the next thought. How do I boost those things? But this is where things go wrong, because it assumes that neurotransmitters are the starting point. They're not. They are the end result of a chain of events. They are the output, not the input. This is the key idea. Neurotransmitters don't just appear randomly. They are influenced by signals coming from your body. So instead of thinking, I need to fix dopamine, a better way is, what is influencing my dopamine? Because that's where real control is. Let's make this even clearer. Imagine you walk into a room and the temperature feels cold. Now, you could try and fix that by putting on a jacket and rubbing your hands together, but that doesn't change the room. The real control is the thermostat. Neurotransmitters are like the temperature. They reflect what's happening. They don't control the system by themselves. So if your dopamine is low, that's not the root problem. That's a signal. Something upstream is influencing it. Same with serotonin. Same with all of the neurotransmitters. They are responding to conditions inside your body. And those conditions come from things like your gut, your immune system, your energy levels, your nervous system. So now we start to shift the question again. Not how do I boost neurotransmitters, but what is my body doing that is shaping them? Because once you understand that, you stop chasing symptoms. You start working with causes. And this is why people get stuck. They try to hack their dopamine, boost serotonin, calm the brain, but they ignore what's underneath. So the changes don't last because the signals haven't changed. And this is where we go next. We're going to look at the system underneath this, the system that actually controls the signals. Because once you see that clearly, everything becomes much easier to understand. And more importantly, much easier to influence. So remember this before we move on. Neurotransmitters are what? Messengers. They reflect what's happening in your body. They are not the starting point, they are the result. And if you change the inputs, you change the outputs. That's where we're going to build on next. Now, we're going to connect everything because at this point you understand something important, like really important. Neurotransmitters are not the starting point, they are the result. So now the real question becomes what is controlling the result? What is actually shaping those signals? And this is where we introduce the system underneath it, because your brain is not operating alone. There's a hierarchy, a structure, and once you see it, everything starts to make sense. Like here's the simplest way to understand how your body works. There are 4 main layers. First, your gut. Second, your immune system. Third, your nervous system. And fourth, your brain. In that order. So let's walk through this slowly. Your gut is not just digestion. It's full of bacteria. And those bacteria are active. They produce signals. They interact with your body. They influence what gets sent upstream. So your gut is constantly generating information. Now, that information doesn't go straight to your thoughts. It goes to your immune system. Your immune system is like a filter. It's constantly asking one question. Are we safe or are we under threat? And based on the signals coming from your gut, it decides how to respond. If everything looks good, it stays calm. If something looks off, it activates. And when it activates, it creates signals. These signals are things that tell you, like literally the rest of your body, we need to be alert. We need to defend. This might not be safe. Now, those signals don't stay in the immune system. They get passed on, like to your brain. And your brain reads those signals. It doesn't guess. It doesn't assume. It responds. Your brain responds. So if your immune system is sending signals of stress, your brain creates a stressed state. It has to. If your immune system is calm, your brain allows a calm state. It has to. Now, here's where the nervous system comes in. Your nervous system is the bridge. It takes what your brain interprets and turns it into a physical state, fight or flight, or calm and relaxed. So when people say, I'm stuck in fight or flight, that's true, but they're missing what's driving it, because the nervous system didn't decide that it on its own. It's responding to signals that come from your immune system, which were produced by your gut. So now we have a full loop. Gut creates signals, immune system interprets the signals, brain responds to signals, nervous system creates the state. And that state affects your mood, it affects your energy, it affects your motivation, which we then call neurotransmitters. So now we can say something clearly. Your neurotransmitters are downstream. They sit at the end of this chain. They reflect what's happening underneath. This is why trying to fix them directly doesn't work long term, because you're working at the bottom of the system, not the top. Now, this doesn't mean your brain has no influence at all. It absolutely does. You can use things like breathing and relaxation and mindset to shift your state temporarily, but that's not real. It's not the root. Because if the signals from your body don't change, you keep getting pulled back into that state. This is why people feel stuck. They try to calm the system. The body keeps sending the stress signals. So the state returns over and over and over again. But when you shift the signals that you're sending the brain in particular, everything changes, because now the immune system calms down. The brain receives different information. The nervous system must follow, and your state shifts naturally, not forced, not temporary, but as a result of changing what's underneath. So this is the key idea to lock in before we move on. Your brain is not running the show by itself. It's responding to the signals from your body. And those signals are shaped by your gut, your immune system, and your energy state. When you fix those, everything downstream changes. That's the system. And now we can start to go deeper into each piece of it. Now you understand the system, we can do something about it. We're going to zoom in on one of the biggest drivers of how you feel. And this is something most people never connect properly: inflammation. Now, don't overthink that word. Inflammation just means your body is reacting to something. That's it. It could be reacting to like food or stress or poor gut health, lack of sleep, and internal imbalance. And when that reaction happens, your body shifts into a defensive state. Now, here's where it gets important. Your brain is constantly monitoring your body. It's always asking, are we safe or are we under threat? And inflammation sends a very clear signal. It says something isn't right. This could be a problem. We need to be careful. So what does your brain do with that information? It adjusts your state. It doesn't ignore it. It literally responds to all the information it receives. And this is where your mood starts to change, because from a biological standpoint, if your body senses a threat, it doesn't make sense to feel highly motivated, relaxed, calm, and creative. That would be the wrong response. Instead, your brain shifts into a state that matches the signal. So you might feel flat or tired or low energy, anxious, on edge, low libido. Not because your life is bad, but because your body is signaling that something is off. This is one of the biggest misunderstandings people have. They think their mood is purely psychological, but the large part of it is biological. It's driven by signals, and inflammation is one of the strongest signals there is. Simple truth. Inflammation distorts your brain signals. Let's make this real. Have you ever noticed that sometimes you feel anxious, but nothing is actually wrong? Or you feel unmotivated even though you want to do things? Or you feel flat and can't explain why? That's often not a mindset problem, that's a signal problem. And your body is creating a state, and your brain is reflecting it. Now, here's another important point. This doesn't mean inflammation is bad. We need it. It's part of how your body protects you. But the problem is when it stays elevated. When your body is in a constant, low defensive state. Because then your brain is constantly receiving something isn't right. Stay alert. Don't relax fully. Don't switch off. And over time, that becomes your normal. This is where people get stuck because they start trying to fix the feeling. They try to push through, motivate themselves, think differently, but the signal hasn't changed. So the state keeps coming back all the time. Now think about this. If your mood is being shaped by inflammation, then trying to fix mood directly is like trying to fix the reflection in the mirror without changing what's in front of it. It doesn't work. You have to change the source. And this is where things start to become truly empowering because inflammation is not random. It's influenced by what you do. It's influenced by what you eat, how your gut is functioning, and how your body processes energy, how well you recover. So instead of asking, how do I feel better? A better question is, what is creating the signals that are making me feel like crap? Because when you lower the signals, the state changes. Not because you forced it, but because your body no longer sees a threat. And this is where people start to notice something interesting, where inflammation drops. They don't just feel less bad, they feel clearer, they feel lighter, they feel more stable, they feel more, like themselves. And that's because the brain is no longer being pushed into defensive state. So before we move on, lock this in. Your mood is not just in your mind, it's being shaped by the signals from your body. And inflammation is one of the strongest signals there are. Reduce the signal and your brain responds. That's the shift. Now, we're going to go one layer deeper and look at one of the biggest places these signals come from, your gut. Now we go to one of the most important parts of the entire system, because if you remember the hierarchy we just built, everything starts here. Your gut is not just about digestion, it's about breaking down food. Your gut is literally a signaling center. It's constantly communicating with your body. And more importantly, it's constantly influencing the signals that go to your brain. Inside your gut, you have bacteria, trillions of them. And these bacteria are not passive, they are active. They produce compounds that interact with your immune system. They influence inflammation. They affect how your body processes food. So your gut is constantly generating information, and that information gets sent into the system. Now remember what we said earlier. Your immune system reads signals and then decides, are we safe or are we under threat? A large part of those signals come from your gut. So if your gut is in a good state, these signals are clear. Your immune system stays calm. Your brain receives safe signals, and your state reflects that. But if your gut is off, if the bacteria are out of balance, and if the gut lining is not functioning well, then the signals change. And this is where problems start, because now your immune system starts to pick up something isn't right. And once that happens, everything downstream shifts. It has to. Your brain reads those signals, your nervous system responds to those signals, and your state has to change. This is why the gut is so important, because it's one of the main sources of signals in the body. It literally shapes how you feel. Now let's make this simple. If your gut is sending bad signals, your brain will create a bad state. If your gut is sending good signals, your brain will allow a better state. This is not theory, this is how the system works. And this is why people can feel anxious for no reason, flat for no reason, low energy for no reason, because the reason is not in their thoughts, it's in their signals. Now, here's something like insanely powerful. You can change those signals, and often with very simple actions. For example, feeding the right bacteria. There are certain bacteria in your gut that are strongly linked to gut lining, healthy immune balance, and absolutely better signals. And one of the simplest ways to support them is through specific foods. A very basic example of this is apple skins, not the whole apple, the skin, because the skin contains compounds that feed key bacteria in your gut. And when those bacteria are supported, your gut lining improves, your immune system receives better signals, and your brain reflects that change. Now, this doesn't mean eat apple skins and everything is fixed. Nah, that's not the point. The point is this. Small inputs can change signaling, and when signaling changes, state changes. This is where people start to realize something. They don't need to overhaul everything, they need to target key levers. Because the gut is one of the biggest levers there is. And when you improve it, you're not just helping digestion, you're improving immune signals. Inflammation levels improves. Communication with the brain improves, which means you're influencing how you feel. So before we move on, lock this in. Your gut is one of the main sources of the signals that shape your brain. And when you improve your gut, you improve those signals. And when you improve the signals, your brain responds. That's the connection. Now, we move to another major driver, something that controls motivation more than people realize. Energy. Because most people think motivation is mental. They think, I just need to, more discipline. I just need to push harder. I just need to get my mindset right. But here's the reality. Motivation is not just mental, it's biological. And it's heavily tied to energy. Let's make this really simple. Your body is always making decisions based on survival. It's constantly asking, do we have enough energy to do this? Because from a biological standpoint, if energy is low, the priority is not action. It's not goal achievement. It's not kicking ass. The priority is conservation. So what does your body do? It reduces drive. It reduces motivation. It slows you down, not because you're lazy, but because it's protecting you. Your body is literally protecting you. And this is where things start to click. People call low motivation, what people call low motivation is actually low signaling. Your body is saying, we don't have enough resources right now to do this. Let's not push. And your brain translates that into, I don't feel like doing anything. Now think about how many people experience this. They sit there thinking, why can't I just do the thing? I know what I need to do, but I just can't get myself to do it. And they blame themselves. But it's not a character flaw. It's a signal problem. Your body is influencing your brain. Now, let's connect all this to neurotransmitters. Dopamine is often linked to motivation, and people try to boost dopamine directly. But dopamine doesn't operate in isolation. It responds to energy availability. If your body is in a low energy state, it won't push dopamine signaling high because that would be inefficient. It would be like pressing the accelerator on the car with no fuel in the tank. So instead of trying to force motivation, you look at energy, because when energy improves, motivation often returns naturally. This is why people sometimes notice on certain days, everything feels easy. You're focused, you're productive, you're motivated, and on other days, everything feels heavy. Same life, same responsibilities, completely different state. Why? Because energy signaling changed. Now, what affects energy? Things like how you eat, how stable your blood sugar is, how well your body processes fuel, how much inflammation is present. Because inflammation and poor energy, they literally go together. And if your body is inflamed, energy production is less efficient. And when energy drops, motivation follows. This is why everything we've talked about connects. Gut influences inflammation, inflammation influences energy, energy influences motivation, and motivation shows up as dopamine. So again, we're not chasing dopamine, we're working upstream. Now, this is where people get stuck. They try to push through, rely on willpower, force action, but the underlying signal hasn't changed, so it feels hard. And over time, that creates frustration. But when you improve energy, something different happens. You don't have to force as much. You don't have to fight yourself because your body is now supporting the action. This is a completely different experience. So before we move on, lock this in. Motivation is not just in your mind, it's influenced by the energy. And energy is influenced by what's happening in your body. Improve the energy and your brain responds. That's the shift. Now, we move into something that connects everything together. The nervous system, one of my favorites. And this is where people think the problem starts, but we're going to show where it actually fits. You've probably heard things like, I'm stuck in fight or flight, I need to calm my nervous system, I'm always stressed. And those things can feel very real. But here's where we need to get precise. Because most people think the nervous system is the starting point. They think something is wrong with my nervous system and that's why I feel so shitty. But based on everything we've built so far, you can probably already see the issue with that. The nervous system is not the starting point, it's a response. Let's make this simple. Your nervous system has two main states, fight or flight and calm and relaxed, rest and digest. So fight or flight is your body preparing for danger. Calm and relaxed is your body feeling safe. Now here's the key question. What determines which state you're in? And most people say stress, but that's not the full picture because your brain doesn't just react to your thoughts, it reacts to your signals from your body. So if your body is sending signals like inflammation, poor gut signals, low energy, internal stress, your body reads that as something isn't right. And what it does, it activates the nervous system. It puts you into fight or flight, not because life out there is out of control, but because your body is sending signals of threat inside. This is a major shift in understanding. You're not stuck in fight or flight because you're weak. You're not stuck because you can't relax. You're stuck because your body is pushing you into that state. And if the signals don't change, the state won't change. This is why people try things like breathing exercises, meditation, relaxation techniques, and they feel better, but it's only temporary because those things are working at the level of the nervous system. They can calm it down for a moment, but if the body keeps sending stress signals, the brain will just turn it back on again. So the state returns over and over and over again. Now, this doesn't mean those tools are useless. They're actually very, very helpful, but they're not the root fix. They are a top-down tool. What we're focusing on here is bottom-up change, changing the signals that are driving the system. Because when those signals change, something very different happens. Your brain no longer sees a threat. So it stops activating the nervous system and you naturally shift into a calmer state. Not because you forced it, but because your body allowed it. This is the difference between managing symptoms and changing the system. So now you can see how everything connects. Gut sends signals. Immune system interprets them. Brain responds. Nervous system creates the state. And that state affects how you feel, how you think, how you act. So again, we come back to the same idea. The nervous system is not broken, it's responding. And if you want to change the response, you change the signals. That's where the leverage is. So before we move on, lock this in. You don't just calm the nervous system, you fix the signals that are driving it. And when those signals change, the system follows. That's the shift. Now, we move into something that explains why so many people stay stuck, even when they're trying to do the right thing, why most solutions don't actually work long term. Now, this is where a lot of people start to recognize themselves because at this point, you might be thinking, I've tried a lot of things. I've worked on my mindset. I've tried supplements. I've tried to fix my stress. And maybe some of it helped, but it didn't last. And this section explains why. Because most solutions focus on the wrong layer. They focus on the output, not the system underneath. Let's break that down. If you feel unmotivated or anxious or flat or low, most advice will tell you to fix your mindset. Push harder, think differently, stay disciplined, work. Or take something to boost, dopamine, serotonin, GABA, calm your brain. And again, those things can create short-term change, but they don't fix the system. because they're working at the bottom of the chain. They're trying to change the result without changing what's producing the result in the first place. So what happens? You feel better for a bit, and then you slide back because the signals didn't change. Now, let's go back to the model. Gut, immune system, brain, nervous system, state. If you only try to change, your thoughts, your nervous system, your neurotransmitters, but your gut is off, your immune system is still activated, your energy is still unstable, then the system is still producing the same signals. So your brain keeps responding the same way. This is why people feel stuck, not because they're not trying, but because they're trying at the wrong level. They're putting effort in, but not getting lasting results. And over time, that creates frustration. They start thinking, maybe this is how I am. Maybe I'm not just disciplined enough. Maybe something is wrong with me, and their identity changes. But that's not the truth. The truth is they've never been shown where the real control is. Now, here's another important piece. A lot of solutions are designed to give quick relief, and quick relief feels good, but it doesn't always lead to long-term change. Because relief is not the same as resolution. Relief is temporary shift. Resolution is system change. And that's where the focusing on here is resolution, changing the signals at the source. So the system behaves differently. Now, this doesn't mean everything you've tried is useless. It just means it's incomplete. It's missing the foundation. And once you add the foundation, things start to work differently. And you don't have to rely on willpower as much. You don't have to force things as much because the system is now working for you instead of against you. This is where things become so much easier, not because life changed, but because your internal signals changed. So before we move on, lock this in. Most solutions fail because they focus on the output, not the system underneath. If you don't change the signals, you don't change the result. But when you change the signals, everything downstream, it must follow. That's the shift. Now, we move into the most important part, what you can actually do about this. Simple actions that start to change the system. Now we get to the part that actually changes things, because understanding is powerful, but only if it leads to action. And this is where most people go wrong. They think, I need to do everything perfectly. I need a complete plan. I need to change everything at once. But that's not how this works. You don't need to do everything. You need to do the right things. And ideally, it's actually small. And when they change the signals, like one at a time, the signal starts changing and everything downstream, it must follow. So instead of overwhelming you, we're going to keep this simple. Just a few key actions. 1, feed your gut. We start here because this is where most signals begin. Your gut is one of the biggest drivers of immune signaling, inflammation, brain communication. So improving your gut improves everything downstream. Now, we don't overcomplicate this. We start simple, like eat skins of 1 or 2 apples in the morning for a few days. Not the whole apple, just the skin, because the skin contains compounds that feed key bacteria in your gut. And when those bacteria are supported, your gut lining improves. Your immune system receives better signals, and your brain reflects that. That's a small input with a large effect. Number 2, stabilize energy. Motivation control. Remember this, energy drives motivation. So if your energy is unstable, your motivation will be unstable. This means avoiding big crashes. Things that can help eating, like eating regularly, enough to maintain stable energy, not going long periods where you crash hard, paying attention to how your body responds to meals, because when your energy stabilizes, your brain allows more drive. You don't have to force it. 3, reduce inflammation. We talked about this earlier. Inflammation distorts your brain signals. So one of the simpler things you can do is start noticing what consistently makes you feel worse. After eating certain foods, after different habits, after certain patterns, that's feedback. Your body is telling you something. And when you reduce those inputs, inflammation drops. It has to. Signals improve, state improves. Number 4, move your body. Movement is one of the fastest ways to shift your state. Not extreme exercise, just movement. Walking, light activity. Anything that gets your body engaged. This helps energy, signaling, immune function, overall communication in the body. Again, simple input, large effect. 5, stop fighting yourself. Like literally, remove all friction. This one is different, but it's important. Once you understand this system, you stop blaming yourself. You stop thinking, I'm just lazy, I just need more discipline. Because now you understand your body is influencing your state. So instead of fighting yourself, you work with your body. You change the signals. And when you change the signals, things start to feel easier. Key idea to lock in. You don't need more complexity. You need better signals. And better signals come from simple, consistent actions, not perfection, not extremes, just small changes. Literally done consistently over time. Now, here's what you're going to notice. As you apply even 1 or 2 of these, things begin to shift. You feel a little clearer, a little more stable, a little more like yourself. That's the system responding. That's your body changing signals and your brain following. So before we move to the final section, lock this in. You don't fix your signals, you don't fix your brain directly, you change the inputs. And when the inputs change, everything downstream changes. That's how you take control of this. Now let's bring everything together, because at this point, you've seen the full picture. And more importantly, you've seen it differently. You've started with the idea that your brain might be the problem, that something inside your head needed fixing, that your mood, your motivation, your energy were all coming from your brain. But now you can see something much clearer. Your brain is not the source. It's the responder. It's literally reading the signals from your body and creating a state that matches those signals. So when you feel low or flat or unmotivated or anxious, it's not random. It's not a failure. It's a response to what your body is telling your brain. And those signals come from your gut, your immune system, your energy state, your nervous system. That's the system. And once you understand that, everything becomes simpler, because now you know where the leverage is. You don't chase neurotransmitters. You don't try and force motivation. You don't try and calm your nervous system. You go underneath it. You change the signals, because when the signals change, when you change the signals, the system changes. Your immune system calms down. Your brain receives different information. Your nervous system shifts, and your state must follow. Not because you forced it, but because your body allowed it. This is the difference between fighting yourself and working with your biology. And this is where things start to feel different. You stop asking, what's wrong with me? And you start asking, what signals is my body creating? That's a completely different question, and it leads to completely different answers. Because now you're not stuck. Now you have control, not by doing more, but by doing the right things. Small, simple actions that change how your body is functioning. And when your body changes, your brain has to follow. It must. That's the model. That's the shift. And that's what gives you a path forwards. So if you take one thing from this entire video, make it this. You are not broken. Your brain is not the problem. Your body is sending signals constantly, and those signals can be changed. Fix the signals and your brain must follow. That's how you take control of your mood, your energy, and your motivation. That's how you actually change how you feel. And that's where this all starts. Now, before you leave this, I want to make this really simple for you, because you've just taken in a lot of information, and the goal is not to do everything. The goal is to start. So here's what I want you to do. Pick one thing, not 5, not everything we talked about, just one. Start with something simple. Something like feeding your gut, stabilizing your energy, or paying attention to what affects your state. And just observe. Notice how your body responds, because once you start seeing the connection, everything changes. You stop guessing, you stop chasing random solutions, you start understanding your own body. Like you're the owner of this vehicle. Now, here's the next step. Over the next videos, we're going to go deeper. We're going to break down specific neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, and GABA, and show you what actually influences them and how to shift them using, simple practical actions. So if this made sense to you, stay with it, because we're going to build on this understanding. And just know, the more you hear something that's true, the deeper it lands. Repetition doesn't just remind you, it literally rewires the brain. So come back to this message often and notice how your understanding begins to expand. And by the time your understanding of this piece comes together, you won't just understand how you feel, you'll know how to change how you feel. And if you've ever felt stuck in mood or energy or motivation, this is where it starts. Subscribe, because in the next video, we'll show you exactly how to change it all. Until then, remember, healing is easy.